Welcome to our newly updated ServiceNow Fundamentals series. Jeff here from ServiceNow Simple, where we help people understand the ins and outs of ServiceNow with a focus on keeping things as simple as possible. In this video, we're going to log into the application and have a look around the ServiceNow user interface. We'll talk about the different components that make up the user interface, have a look at some of the applications and modules, and discuss the different ways and screens that ServiceNow uses to present data from the database. Some of the keywords to watch for in this video include the next experience, unified navigation header, application navigator, baseline implementation, application category and module, impersonate, list, form, workspace, dashboard, knowledge base, and service category. As always, I appreciate you being part of the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let's jump into it. In our last video, we saw that in order to log into the ServiceNow UI, a user needed to have a user record created in the database, which gives them a user ID and password. And that user record, along with group and role records, tell the UI which permissions the user has, essentially what they can and cannot do within the platform. I'm logging into my personal developer instance, or PDI, where I have a user record that's set up with the administrator role, which gives me the ability to do pretty much everything. I'll go ahead and enter my user ID and password, and I'm taken to my home page. And first things first, if you're following along using your PDI or some other instance, don't be alarmed if what you see isn't exactly the same as what I'm showing here. Your home page, for example, might be different based upon your roles or persona. And there could also be some minor differences depending on the version of the platform and the way the properties are set. So welcome to the primary user interface for ServiceNow. They call this the Next Experience Unified Navigation, and it's the UI you will spend nearly all of your time using. I've not made any configuration changes or customizations to this instance, so it's set up exactly as it comes out of box from ServiceNow, and they call that a baseline implementation. Let's have a quick look at the design here. First, this bar across the top is called the Unified Navigation Header. You can expect it to pretty much always be here and remain consistent, and I'll go through each of the tools available here in just a second. And beneath it, you have the main content area where you'll be doing most of your work. When you log in, it displays your home page, which you can customize, and I'll show you how to do that later. Mine currently displays this App Engine Studio page, but yours may look different depending upon your configuration. And sometimes, depending upon where you are and what you're doing in the UI, this main content area will be further divided to include left and right sidebars. Here's an example of a left sidebar, and here's an example of a right sidebar. On the Unified Navigation Header, starting from the left, the first thing you see is your logo. This can be changed to the logo of your company, and if you click it, it will always take you back to your home page. Next, you see a set of menu items, and these can change depending upon the roles that are set up for your user record. Clicking on a menu item will open the corresponding menu. When you do that, notice this pin icon. Clicking the pin will pin the corresponding menu to the left sidebar. This can be useful if you find yourself using a particular menu fairly often. Saves you a click or two. You can then click the pin icon again to unpin it, and you can do that for any of the menus on the Unified Navigation Header. Let's talk through these menus. Everyone should have the All menu, and this is the item you select to get to all of the applications and modules you have access to. Clicking it opens what is called the Application Navigator. I'll do that and pin it to my sidebar. Within the Application Navigator, you see a listing of all of your available applications and their categories and modules. Each of the top-level items here is called an application. So we have the self-service application, followed by the activity subscriptions application, and then the App Engine application, and on down the list. Clicking on an application will expand it to display its categories and modules. A category is simply a grouping of modules within an application, and it'll have this expand collapse icon beside it. If I open the App Engine application, for example, I can see categories for configuration, collaboration, pipelines, deployments, application intake, and templates. And beneath each category, I see the modules. So, for the configuration category of the App Engine application, I can see there are modules for properties and guided setup. And this is all very flexible. If I open the availability application, for example, I'll see that there are no categories at all, just 3 modules. Anytime you click on an application or a category, you simply expand or collapse it. They're just used for grouping. It's the modules, when clicked, that actually open a page within the main content area. Notice, if you hover over an application or a module, you might see a couple of additional icons, depending on your privileges. The star icon allows you to add that application or module to your favorites list. And that's super useful if you find yourself using a certain application or module fairly often. And since I'm logged in with an administrator role, I also see an edit icon. We'll talk more about this later, but just know that all of the applications and categories and module items that you see here can be modified. You can add new ones, you can delete them, you can change them, you can reorder them. I'll go ahead and scroll through the list of applications here. And as you can see, that the list is long. And each of these applications, remember, can be clicked and expanded to reveal any number of categories and modules. To assist in finding the module you need, the Application Navigator includes a filter at the very top. As you type a keyword into the App Navigator filter, the list of available items will be narrowed to only include those that contain the value in their name. This can be super helpful, and I'd encourage everyone to experiment with it to see how it helps narrow down your choices and find the application module you need. The Favorites menu is where you go to gain quick access to items you've marked as favorites. We saw how you can add a favorite from the App Navigator by clicking the star icon. And you'll see that throughout the interface you have lots of opportunities to add pages to your favorites list. At any time you can come here and click an item to quickly open the corresponding page. You can click the edit icon to modify your favorites by changing the name and color and choosing associated icons, or adding groups as needed. And if you have a favorite that you no longer need, simply hover over it and click the X icon to remove it from the list. As you move about within the user interface, the platform is always keeping track of where you're going and what you're doing. Clicking on the History menu displays a listing of the pages you've most recently visited in chronological order. And this allows you to quickly get back to a page you were previously on. By default, the History menu will include the last 30 places you've been, but that can be customized by an administrator through a system property setting. There are a few locations within the user interface that are not tracked by history. If, for example, the page opens in a new browser tab, which happens occasionally, those pages will not be included in your history. But for the most part, you can depend on the History menu to provide quick access to return to your most recently viewed pages. The Workspaces menu item may or may not be available to you depending on the roles that you're set up with in your user account. You'll find that throughout the UI, items will only be displayed if they relate to the type of work that you do, based upon your persona or your roles. And if you have a role or roles for which workspaces exist, you can come here to access those accordingly. I'll talk more about workspaces in a bit, but for now you can think of them as special pages that are designed to facilitate a certain type of work done by a certain type of user. And the last thing I'll mention here is that if you have a role or roles for which there is only one workspace available, the name of this menu item will actually change to the name of that specific workspace. So things might look a little different depending on your role. And finally, the admin menu, again, is a role-specific item that will only be displayed if you have the administrator role. It displays a set of modules that only administrators have access to use. Next to the list of menus, you'll see what ServiceNow calls the contextual app pill. It essentially displays the name of the page you're currently viewing, or where you are within the UI, sort of like one of those "You Are Here" icons on a map. Notice it also contains the star icon that you can use at any time to add the current page to your list of favorites. Just to the right of the contextual app pill is the global search tool, which can be used to search for keywords or identifiers across the entirety of the platform's applications and the records within the database. So if, for example, you know the identifier of some database record, an incident number, for example, you can enter it here to quickly pull up the corresponding record. You can also enter a keyword or key phrase that might be used in a name or description value to quickly search the platform for any items that contain that phrase. I could and likely will do an entire video focusing on the details of how to use global search, but for now, I just recommend that everyone play with it a bit, begin to understand what's available and how it works. The application scope icon, which appears as a globe, is another role-based item that will only appear if you have an administrator or a certain set of developer type roles. We'll learn more about application development in ServiceNow in an upcoming video, but this is a tool that allows a developer to select which application they're making changes to and how those changes should be recorded for eventual deployment to another instance. The discussions icon can be used to toggle on or off the discussion sidebar. And you can think of discussions as ServiceNow's internal chat or collaboration tool. At any point, discussions can be started between multiple users to enable teamwork and collaboration when working within the platform. Clicking the question mark icon opens the Embedded Help panel, which provides access to context-sensitive help and other articles related to your current location within the user interface. So if, for example, you've opened up a certain type of task record, clicking the Embedded Help icon will open a list of helpful articles about working and resolving that type of task. It's possible that in certain locations no articles exist, in which case the panel will be opened with a blank list. We'll learn more about knowledge management in ServiceNow in a future video, but be aware that as more people use the platform and contribute to discussions and articles, the value of this embedded help increases. And ServiceNow comes out of box with an application for configuring and managing system notifications. Clicking the notifications icon here allows the logged in user to access those notifications, and they can also configure how and when they prefer to receive notifications going forward. And finally, the user menu provides a set of menu items specific to the logged in user. Let's look through these. The profile menu item allows the user to view and change attributes on their user record, including the ability to change or reset their password. The preferences item provides the ability to customize the look and feel of the user interface and set options for display, accessibility, debugging, themes, and notifications. Changes that are made here only impact the individual user that's logged into the platform. We'll dig more deeply into each of these in an upcoming video, but in the meantime, feel free to test these out on your own. The Impersonate user item is a role-based item that will only be available to users with the administrator or impersonator roles. It allows you to select another user of the platform and essentially take on their persona, almost as if you've logged out of the platform and back in with some other's user account. This is super useful for administrators who are working with an issue for a user and they want to view the platform through the user's eyes. And when they're finished, you can reopen the user menu and choose to end your impersonation. Elevate Role is another role-based item reserved only for administrator-type users. There are a few functions within the platform of such great impact that even administrators aren't granted direct privilege. You can think of them as sort of super secure actions that require an additional wrapper of security. The Elevate Role menu item provides the ability for an administrator to bump up their access and work with those super secure capabilities as they need to. Finally, the Log Out item allows the user to log out of the user interface and end their session. Now let's turn our attention to some of the different types of screens you'll see within the UI. And for the most part, these include list views, form views, workspaces, dashboards, knowledge bases, and the service catalog. Let's have a quick look at each, starting with list views. A list view is a page that displays a list of records from a database table. It includes a set of tools for filtering, sorting, and configuring how the records are displayed. To show you one of those, I'm going to open the All menu, navigate down to the User Administration application, and click on the User module. And what opens is an example of a list view. Up here at the top of the page, it tells us which database table the records are from. In this case, we're looking at a list view of records pulled from the user table. What's awesome though is that regardless of the type of records being displayed, each list view looks and behaves the same. The data is always displayed in rows and columns. Each row represents a record, in our case a user, and each column represents a field or an attribute of the record, in our case things like the user's ID and their name, email address, and so on. If you look at the bottom of the list, you can see the total number of records that exist that meet the list's current conditions. In this case, there are a total of 625 user records, and we can traverse through them in chunks of 20. If you click on a column header, you can sort the list by that column's values. And you click the header again to toggle between sorting in ascending and descending order. And every list view comes with a set of tools that allow you to add conditions or filters to the list. So you can narrow your list down to the specific set of records you're interested in. Let's say, for example, I need to know which user records exist that don't have a value set for their email address. I can create a filter where the email field is empty. And now I can see I have 15 people I need to work with to get that taken care of. And if you look right here, you'll see what ServiceNow calls the list's breadcrumbs. It's essentially a summary of the data we're viewing, including any filters. We started with all user records, and then we applied a filter to only include those where email is empty. The breadcrumbs are interactive, so I can click all here to return to the full list of users. And you can also choose which fields or columns you want to display. And you can change their order to meet your needs. And that's a list view. Next, let's look at a form view. Oh, and by the way, I'll be publishing separate videos on each of these different types of screens that will go into the details, so keep an eye out for those. A form view is a page that displays a single record from a database table. It includes a set of tools for viewing related records and making changes to the record. To show you a form view, all I need to do is open one of the records from my list view by clicking on the link in the first column. And here we have an example of a form view. Just like with the list view, we can see the table where the record is stored here, along with the label of the individual record. We're viewing the user record for someone named Abel Tudor. On a form, each field is displayed as a label and value pair. And the values are displayed using different user interface elements depending on the type of data they contain. So we can see, for example, text fields, drop-down lists, and checkboxes. These are elements that make it easy and efficient to understand and make changes to the values. If we scroll down a bit, we can see additional information about the record, including lists of related records and links to related actions that can be taken. And that's a form view. Now let's check out a workspace. A workspace is a suite of tools displayed on a single page that are designed to solve a specific type of problem or enable the completion of some specific type of work. I can get to one of those by going up to the Unified Navigation header and clicking my Workspaces menu item. As I mentioned previously, it's possible that you won't have access to any workspaces based upon your user record and your roles in the platform. These are designed to enable a specific type of work, and as such, they're closely tied to a specific set of roles within the platform. I have access to 4 different workspaces, and I'll choose the Service Operations workspace for our demonstration. This workspace is designed for users in IT operations and service management roles to easily manage incidents and problems and do investigations to predict and resolve issues as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, it's not very interesting due to the fact that I'm logged into a clean instance where I have no work currently assigned, but you can begin to get the idea. I could quickly access incidents that are assigned to me, service level agreement metrics, unassigned incidents, and catalog tasks. Don't worry, we'll learn what all this stuff is as we move along. I can view the workspace from my personal perspective or the perspective of my team, and I can see what activities I have that are due today or tomorrow or further in the future. It's essentially a combination of lists and forms and reports and other tools on a single page that enable a team to collaborate and complete a specific type of work. Dashboards are a lot like Workspaces, except they're less action-oriented and they're more report-oriented. A dashboard is a custom arrangement of widgets that enable the display of multiple performance analytics or reports on a single screen. Where a workspace is designed to provide the tools needed to complete work, dashboards are designed to provide a current picture of the state of work. I can open the All menu and select the Dashboards module under the Self-Service application to view all of the dashboards that I have access to. These all came out of box from ServiceNow, but with the appropriate roles, you can create custom dashboards of your own to tell whatever story you need to tell. I'll go ahead and open the Incident Overview dashboard for our demonstration. And as you can see, it's much more report-oriented. You can quickly learn from this single page the number of incidents open today, yet to be assigned, overdue, open, not recently updated, and older than 30 days. These can include any charts or lists and any number of different visualizations to provide insight into the current state of some activity. And they're interactive. They allow you to filter the data, or you can click on them and drill in and see the underlying records that make up the reports. Another type of screen you're likely to encounter while working in ServiceNow is knowledge articles. A knowledge article is a page that contains information that helps users get their questions answered and provides guidance on getting their work done. I'll navigate to All, Self-Service, Knowledge to show you an example. And you can think of a knowledge base as sort of like ServiceNow's library of articles. A company can have as many knowledge bases as they want. They can organize them however they like. I'll open the IT knowledge base, which has 32 articles. And you can see each knowledge base can be then set up with categories and subcategories for the purposes of organizing the articles and making them easy to locate and access. I'm going to open the article titled Microsoft Outlook Issues. And here's our example of a knowledge article. It's what you'd expect an article to look like, with headings and paragraphs. And these can have diagrams and pictures as needed. And they also include mechanisms for providing feedback, requesting modifications, or starting a discussion. And last, but certainly not least, I want to show you what the service catalog looks like in ServiceNow. To do that, I'll navigate to All, Self-Service, Service Catalog. The Service Catalog is like a company's online store, but for ordering IT products and services, or products and services made available by other departments. If, for example, I'm a new employee and I need to order my new laptop, I can pop into the Hardware Catalog and choose the device I prefer and configure the options and add it to my shopping cart. I can then proceed to checkout and place my order, which will trigger a workflow or a series of actions that are required to get approval and fulfill the request. The Service Catalog can be set up to provide all sorts of different products and services, like requesting the creation of an email account, for example, or requesting access to the corporate parking garage. And through what ServiceNow calls record producers, the Service Catalog can be used to report an issue and create an incident within the platform to facilitate and track to resolution. And that's the ServiceNow user interface, or Next Experience Unified Navigation, as they call it. Of course, it's not everything, but it's most of it. And I'd give it a thumbs up. It's fairly consistent in the components that it uses and the menus and all of the different types of screens. And once you get in there and start using it, it's fairly intuitive and pretty simple to learn. And if you haven't already, I would highly recommend that everyone head on over to ServiceNow's website and join their developer program. Request and get your personal developer instance and get in the user interface and kick the tires a bit. And keep an eye out on the ServiceNow Simple YouTube channel. Of course, I'll be continuing this series of ServiceNow fundamental videos, and I'll be introducing new videos that go into the details of each of the screen types that I introduced in this video. As always, I appreciate you being part of the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.